Welcome everybody. We're around 20 minutes into the Applied Cybersecurity Society meeting. We've got CTF resources, club information. So what you missed, because we started 20 minutes in. So we talked about how we're shifting the focus of this club to cybersecurity competition, such as the government's Cyber Patriot and CyberStart, which we're already participating in, but we're not limiting ourselves to that. We're expanding to different war games, which are really interesting, attack and defend type stuff, and CTFs, capture the flag competitions, which we're just going over, which basically go over different categories of cybersecurity and have challenges within them, and you can learn by participating in those contests. So we'll be having meetings through the Google Meet link, which is posted in #resources. I'll find a way of making that more clear and obvious to people, since I don't think some people know how to access the Meet link. The Discord server is the main area for communication for the club. If anybody needs any help in CyberStart or anything like that when we're not having a club meeting, or any CTF related questions, you can ask in the Discord server. I might add a channel for that. And then there's the Google Drive folder, which is home to all of our resources, intentionally so. So we're going to make sure you have easy access to everything you need in order to succeed in cybersecurity competitions. So here's the resources part of the Google Drive. So far, this is a bit messy because we just started with it, but I'll organize it more as we go on. Okay, Kelly got to join. Good. I'm recording the meeting for the face-to-face people, so you don't need to worry. So recap for the recording. We're going to have resources for you in documents as well. And anything else related to resources will be posted in the Drive folder. So it's imperative that you have a shortcut or a bookmark to this link for the Drive folder. Google Meets has portrait mode. Interesting. Yes, if you're watching the recording, it's very helpful. Okay, so continuing. Back to the CTF page. If it would load. Yeah, I'll probably start these meetings on my computer instead of my laptop. So binary exploitation, also known as actual hacking. You get a program, you got to exploit it. Make it do something it wasn't supposed to do, then here are some techniques. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. So we've partnered with UTD and UT Austin for their cybersecurity clubs and organizations. So they have mentorship programs that we're allowed to participate in as Plano West students. So UTD has weekly workshops for CTF categories, so to speak. And they're starting from yesterday was the kickoff, so they are starting from next month. And I'll be posting information about that in the Discord server. And they're also privately mentoring us in groups in cybersecurity. UT Austin's doing a similar thing. They are different organizations, but they're both offering us mentorship programs with different perspectives. More information can be found in the Opportunities channel in Discord, which is where I've posted the information about that. So, okay, we talked about CTF's mentorship, and we're also going to have guest speakers from the industry, people that have experience with cybersecurity. More info to come about that. But for example, Sophie just mentioned that her aunt worked in Facebook with cybersecurity and that she can put us in contact with her to talk about her experiences. So that'll be the third thing that we do in Applied Cybersecurity Society. And I think I already mentioned it in the recording, but we will be having one more round of officership applications, which are going to be run by Miss Bailey to make sure that it's a good application. So anyways, that was the recap for what we did in the first 20 minutes. And now we're discussing the CTF resources and competitions. So yeah, you can find this in the Google Drive folder. Obviously, I have to improve this document, but I'll start with categories. So I talked about how there were permanent CTFs and CTFs that happened like normal competitions that had a 3-day time limit. Permanent CTFs are always open for you to continue learning from. An example would be Pico CTF or Forever CTF. That's UT Austin's. So, and one CTF that's really interesting, and one thing that you may not think is part of cybersecurity, is OSINT or OSINT, or Open Source Intelligence. I will type that out. So the thing about open source intelligence is that it's really helpful when it comes to one thing. You can look at it from the red team or attacker aspect, collecting information or information gathering if you're going to attack a system or pretty much a physical system or a electronic system. So that actually includes breaking into buildings and stuff. Oh my, what happened here? So Tracelab CTF uses the OSINT information gathering for good. So they're actually a CTF that helps find people that went missing or similar cases, and they use the power of a community who's willing to put in time and effort and those OSINT tools in order to actually help law enforcement find them. So that's actually really interesting. And that is one of the categories of cybersecurity competition. So I talked about binary exploitation. So cryptography, this involves algorithms and the mathematics of encryption, obscuring a message. This is pretty self-explanatory, but you get an insecure algorithm, you have to decrypt it. That's mostly what CTF challenges are. And then there's forensics. So digital forensics is a really interesting category in cybersecurity. From the professional industry perspective, there's mobile digital forensics, which is what you do when you're like going through somebody's phone. You're the police. You found somebody's phone, you suspect them of like an activity that isn't good for the nation. Digital forensics is going through their data, going through what it is. On a law enforcement level, it's more of just getting in and going through the data. But on a CTF level, it's like finding interesting data within a packet, an internet packet capture, like a web packet capture. You'll see what that is. Or a rootkit or an odd program located within memory. And trying to get clues from a hacked machine's disk image, stuff like that. So forensics can be really interesting in CTFs. Now, penetration testing is what most people think of when they think of cybersecurity, often referred to as boot to root. You'll get the full scope of an entire machine. You need to know the full scope of an entire machine or system. So this is actually kind of related to what I talked about. I talked about OSINT. So information gathering, you get the scope of the entire system, which includes the office building, the physical systems of the company or whatever business hires you to do a penetration test. And then you'll have to know everything before you can figure out how you can get into it. So you start with what, on a machine level, you start by finding out what programs and services run on it, ways to get in, maybe a way to pop root or get root. This can often incorporate other categories. So people sometimes say that penetration testing is what CTFs are about. I mean, it's one category of it, but it encompasses the other categories or disciplines that are mentioned in this document. So then there's reverse engineering, which is also really interesting. And it involves cracking the logic of a compiled binary. So that just means like a compiled program. And you have to figure out what the program logic of it is. So this refers to analyzing code on the binary level, so machine code, piecing together program logic bits by reading assembly. And the rev challenges usually come in 3 forms. You have to solve a puzzle or challenge after finding the conditions and requirements by reading the code. Flag/password verifiers, you have to like give them a password or a flag verifier or whatever, and then the program will actually output the flag. And then nested VMs. Now, I have not seen anything about nested VMs before, but you see more of these on the collegiate level of CTF competition. So nested VMs implement a custom virtual machine. So just to give you an idea of the scope of these competitions, you have people all around the world doing them, and I think actually in larger numbers than programming competitions, because CTFs are a little bit more accessible in the sense that there's guides available out there and there's a less barrier to entry if you just want to start learning the general skills. And there are a lot of people interested in cybersecurity around the world. So on the collegiate level, in terms of cybersecurity competition, there are a crazy number of CTFs, and there's actually like the collegiate version of Cyber Patriot, which is called CCDC, or like Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition, which is similar to what you'll see in Cyber Patriot Nationals. For now, Cyber Patriot just seems like system administration stuff, changing the passwords of insecure users and then like removing any users, user auditing, security auditing, password changing, that kind of stuff. Once you get to national level or once you get to collegiate level, there's actually attack and defense. So they kind of refrain from saying anything about attacking since it's a government competition and they can't really say that they're attacking into things. But the attack and defense competitions are the next step after Cyber Patriot. So that's another thing where it's a basic level, similar to CyberStart. Once you get higher up, you'll start doing more of the stuff related to CTFs, penetration testing, red team, which is the attack side, which I talked before. Steganography is hidden data within the actual media. So as far as CTFs go, steganography can be really irritating because there's no leads on where to go when you look at a steganography challenge. It'll be like a picture. And then what are you supposed to do with the picture? Run through every possible combination. So it can be really frustrating at times. But in the real world, steganography is very useful. Web exploitation. The other most known thing when it comes to hacking. Can you hack my ex-friend's enemy? Or enemies, sorry. Facebook, Gmail, Twitter account for me. So there's two types of web exploitations. Client side, which is on your own side, and server side, which is on the server side. So if you ever wondered why online games can't be easily hacked, for example, if some of you have played Cookie Clicker in the past, you could just change the JavaScript of the actual website. So by inspecting element, in order to change the amount of money you have or amount of cookies you have in Cookie Clicker, because that is client side, that all the data is stored. But then server side, it's obviously not easily accessible to you. Some really basic server-side exploits you might have seen in the CyberStart competition with SQL injection by putting SQL commands in an insecure form and then having it drop data. But there's a lot more out there with web, and I have a good resource for that. So there was this book called the Web Application Hacker's Handbook that they actually turned into an online course. So that kind of lets me segue into the next area of what I'm going to discuss, but I'll just finish web exploitation first. So client side involves XSS injections or cross-site request forgery. It's probably just easier to say that. To make it get data from another user's browser. And then server side, have the server program run some code which will allow the hacker to run something that wasn't intentional, such as, like I said, SQL injection, JavaScript prototype pollution, type confusion, etc. So you may not understand a lot of that right now, but as we continue to do this and gain experience, it'll start to make sense. Okay, so that was that for the CTF competition resources. As you can see, it's work in progress. We are working on it. And now, to the document that I've worked on the most, this is the Cybersecurity Learning Resources Directory. So let me reload that. And does anybody have any questions on the categories? Okay, Corbin, that's fine. If you have any questions, you can let me know though. And if you need anything else, you can DM on Discord. This is recorded, so I'll be uploading it to the Google Drive, and you can look to see what you missed. Can y'all still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because like things are freezing up on my side because of, let me close tabs and free up some RAM. Okay.
Yeah, your audio is fine, but the video is like frozen.
Oh, that's fine. As long as my audio works, that's okay. Like the audio is always clear, right? If the audio is interrupted, then that would be an issue, but you can hear me? Could you hear all of what I said?
Yeah. Yeah, I could.
Okay, thankfully. Okay. In that case, I'll be sure to use my PC for these meetings because having tabs open, having me open, and presenting seems to be resource intensive. Okay. Learning resources. Let's open. So here's the table of contents. So I have resources for Linux, programming fundamentals. Don't get scared when you see programming fundamentals. It's just Python. But then if you're interested in learning more about binary exploitation or reverse engineering, you have to know C. So by programming fundamentals, I mean Python and C programming. You can start off with Python programming if programming scares you, or if you're somebody who's been taking CS for a while and you know Java and you're like in APCSA at this point, or if you're in CS3, you can start learning C. And I have I'll get to that when I get to that, but I have some good resources for you. So let's start with Linux. And the reason I'm going through this, y'all, is that so that when you go to access these resources, you know what each thing is for and what you can use. So we may or may not get to CyberStart today, but I'll send out an announcement today, and I highly recommend that everybody signs up if they haven't already. And Miss Bailey, quick question. So what email should I ask the kids in Jasper and Shepton to use for the CyberStart teacher name or whatever? There's like a sponsor email question in CyberStart. So I don't know if Shepton has a computer club. It doesn't? So whose name or email should they put down?
Aaron and somebody else put me down, and that's fine. All I would ask is if they tell me they're a Jasper student.
Okay.
You know, just email me and say, hey, Miss Bailey, I'm a Jasper or Shepton student. Can you verify me?
Okay, cool. So I will ask them to do that. So whoever's here that hasn't signed up, you heard Miss Bailey. When you sign up for CyberStart after I'm done talking, go ahead and email her that, hey, I am a Jasper student or I'm a Shepton student, and I need to sign up for CyberStart. Please verify me. All right. So yeah, there's your email. Courses. So I have it split up into courses and books for most of these. These books pretty much cover what you need to know. Like, don't be scared as soon as I say books. I know a lot of people may not like to read books. I mean, I have PDFs of them that I got from Humble Bundle, so don't worry, they're legal. I bought them. So I have websites, some online free courses. Everything in here is free unless otherwise mentioned, but everything is generally free for you guys to find and use. So I have, for example, here the Dartmouth IMTX course on edX, which is C programming with Linux. So for just studying Linux, that would be the last two sections. Let's see if my text shows. I'll add that in later. Two sections. So anyways, here's an example of the edX course. Learn C and Linux. Develop and debug code in the C language. Discover the foundations of computer programming in Linux. And by the way, it's absolutely essential that you learn Linux if you're interested in cybersecurity. Like, learn Linux, I mean, just learn basic command line stuff, learn what it is. Because a lot of the tools you'll need for CTF competitions, and most servers in the world run on Linux, not everybody uses Windows Server. So it's very important to know Linux basics. So the last two areas in this course involve just Linux tools and libraries. But then the first 5 are all about C programming. And if you're even more interested in C programming, Brendan took, or is taking, or I think he took it last semester, he took the C programming course at Column College. That's COSC 1420. Yeah. What do you want to say about it, Brendan?
Yeah, so if you guys have any questions about learning, you can ask me. Although I'm still learning as well, so we can learn together.
Yeah, same applies to me as well. So that course is gives you 4 computer science credits from Colin College. So if you're interested in going in-state, you can apply that towards UTD, UT, A&M. You can apply that towards them, your degree there as well. So I'm actually going to take that over the summer. There's a summer section available, just so I get credit for learning C, like college credit for learning C. If you have any questions about that, you can reach out to Brendan because he already took it, or me. And the textbook that course uses, COSC 1420, is the textbook that I've included in the document. C Primer Plus, I've looked over it. It's a really good textbook that allows you to self-study from it. So I highly recommend that. So first thing for Linux, if you're going to use any Linux resource, if you're only going to use one of these things below to learn some Linux basics, I would recommend Linux Journey. It's a free website online that allows you to learn the command line fundamentals. Yeah, learn the ways of Linux for free. And it's got a cute mascot too. Let's wait for it to load. Learn the ways of Linux for free. There's the penguin. So here's for the young grasshoppers. Getting started, what is Linux? Learn the fundamentals of the command line. Text foo, advanced text foo, user management, perms, processes, packages. And then it teaches you about devices, file systems, kernels, process utilization. And then networking in the context of Linux. rsync, network basics, subnetting, routing. And then, so it's pretty short and sweet, and then it recommends some additional resources. But it's really, really good in what it teaches you. Let's start with not getting started, because that would be, they wouldn't have the exercises there. Let's, for example, talk about the cat tool in Linux. So in the Linux command line, oh, by the way, if you have Macs, if you have a Mac computer that runs OS 11 or that runs OS X, those computers are based on Unix, which is okay, so Mac OS is similar to Linux, except for they diverged at some point. I think OS X is based on some BSD version of Linux, while Linux is based on Linus Torvalds' own kernel. They're both Unix things. If that doesn't make sense now, don't worry. But they are both Unix operating systems. So you can actually try these commands out without a dedicated Linux virtual machine. Or if you're using Windows, there's this thing called Windows Subsystem for Linux, which allows you to basically run a Linux terminal on your Windows computer. If you have questions about that, ask me, like I said. So Windows Subsystem for Linux lets you run a Linux terminal on your Windows computer. If you're on Mac, you can just use the Mac terminal. And then if you really feel motivated and you haven't used Linux before, you can either message me or just find a nice Linux operating system online. They're all free and open source. There's plenty of resources available for you if you just search a little bit. So yeah, here's an example of what Linux Journey looks like. On the left, you have the pages of the course. And then a little thing. We're almost done navigating files. Simple command to use is the cat command. Tells you what it stands for, what it does, what you can use it for, what you can't use it for, and then exercises. And then cat. So it's really nice, short, simple, sweet, and good for you to learn from. So I highly recommend Linux Journey. So I'll just skim over the rest of these so we have time for questions and talking about CyberStart. So how Linux works gives you a more in-depth look at how Linux works behind the, how should I put it, behind the scenes. So that's one that you should definitely read. And then the latter two aren't really necessary if you're not that interested in learning more about Linux. So the Linux command line is just more stuff about the command line, and then shell scripting, which is writing scripts to automate tasks in Linux, which is really useful. And then this is about system administration. So that's getting more into Linux territory. Programming fundamentals. So like I said, Python crash course and automating the boring stuff with Python, or just generally start with Python crash course, and that'll give you a huge background. For example, the people that aren't doing CyberStart yet may not know about this, but there's this thing called the Moonbase in CyberStart, which is basically where you have to use Python skills and you have to know Python for. And if you studied this beforehand or just read it beforehand, you will be so much more prepared than whatever CyberStart provides you in the field manual. I wouldn't recommend using CyberStart as your only learning resource just because it assumes a lot of other knowledge and how much content can they include, right? They need to have some external resource. Google is your friend, and then this directory is your friend for high quality resources. All of these are very, very good. Okay, so first Python crash course that has a bunch of projects in it, fun stuff that allow you to learn. And then if you want to do some more projects, these guys start from scratch again, but they allow you to do specific types of projects. So this is automate the boring stuff with Python. You can do a lot of stuff a lot faster if you just automate it, or cracking codes with Python if you're interested in cryptography. So then these three are way more cybersecurity related. Violet Python, Black Hat Python, Gray Hat Python. That's all about using Python and exploits. Oh, by the way, never, ever, ever try to hack into or exploit something that does not belong to you or you don't have express permission to do. CTFs are sandbox environments for doing that. Your own virtual machine is an environment for doing that. If you have a different computer, like for example, I have a Raspberry Pi, which is a small computer. You can set those up as labs for practicing. Like for example, there's this thing called vulnerable web application. And then you can practice breaking into that, so to speak. But never ever do anything in a system that does not belong to you. Because legal stuff. So then C programming. C Programmer Plus, like I said, that's a textbook that the Colin course uses. I highly recommend it. Or you can do the edX course. I haven't gone through it yet, but I looked at the content and it looks pretty good. So then a hacking of exploitation chapter 2. Like I said, I bought this. The PDF is in the drive folder. Chapter 2 is just for programming in the context of hacking in C. And some people buy this book just for the section on C. It's short and simple, but it's really useful, and it teaches you more about pointers. So pointers are a powerful feature of C that isn't directly included in Java. Like a reference, Miss Bailey can probably talk more about this than I can because I don't know too much about it. But pointers and references are similar, but pointers are more explicit, and you have to use them in your code for, how should I put it? Or rather, you just have to more explicitly manage references in C. I'll put it that way until I can say it more clearly. So yeah, that's that for C. So this is primarily what you need to do for programming fundamentals in cybersecurity. Yeah, Miss Bailey?
Brendan probably knows about those. He took CS3.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Knows about which? Wait, Brendan knows about what?
Iterators and stuff like that. And Jordy's taking it now.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, reach out to Brendan or Jordy if you need any help with some more advanced content. So like, if you need help with a CTF, Jordy is probably your go-to guy at the moment. Or if it's C or something involving CS3, you can reach out to Brendan because he already finished CS3 last year. So Miss Bailey, why don't you tell them what you cover in CS3, since that isn't too clear in the course description? Just like what kind of stuff you covered.
What we've covered so far. This is my first year to ever teach it.
Oh, I see.
So we've gotten to hash tables, hash sets. We're getting ready to do, and we did linked list, doubly linked list, circular linked list. We're getting ready to do stacks and queues.
I see.
And
there's a lot more data structures related stuff in CS3, and it's still taught in Java. So
that's all that's all that CS3 is, data structures.
Yeah. So you'll learn a lot by taking CS3. So anyways, I'm just going to skim through the rest of these. And then there's the third thing, which is networking. A lot of people overlook networking since it isn't really like a computer science topic. But understanding networks is essential to understand how everything is connected around us. Like some of this stuff has stayed unchanged for 35 to 40 years, the networking content. But that's why it makes it all the more important to know. It evolved from the telephone systems networks, and now the same type of stuff is how things are connected around us today. Check out the book, which is Computer Networks, a Top-Down Approach, or there's the Stanford lectures from their Intro to Computer Networking courses. I highly recommend those. And these are just some additional books and resources that you can get to after you go through those. I'm just going to bold the first thing. So these all are in order of whatever you should go through them in. So the first resource is most likely the easiest resource to do. So Poe and Binary Exploitation. This book is the best book, honestly. It's called Hacking the Art of Exploitation. I've mentioned it twice already. That's the main binary exploitation book. Some of it is a little bit dated, but you can easily find those gaps with Google and whatever CTF resources we have. There'll be more information about it. The Shellcoder's Handbook, that comes later. So I'm going to bold this. Reverse engineering, we've already discussed what it is. This isn't a book, it's actually a website. Well, it's an online book. So there's a guy named Denis Yurchev who has made notes for C and C++, but he also has a reverse engineering book that's highly recommended as a starting point. Every single one of these resources is very highly recommended. And then forensics. This one is just like more computer forensics, guide type stuff. I'll be adding to these and reorganizing this. Forensics is the one that's like the least vetted in terms of resources so far. The art of memory forensics is a really good source, and this one's also a really good source. But the Windows forensics one in the middle, I still have to look at for myself. So then cryptography. A lot of people that are interested in math are interested in cryptography as well. So then this is the code book. There's a book called the Code Book, PDF and Drive, which is a good introduction to how codes were used in history, cryptography and history, but also cryptography now. And then there's Serious Cryptography, which covers everything you need to know about cryptography for cybersecurity today. Serious Cryptography is like the one book you should read if you want to know more about cryptography. And then this is more advanced stuff, like I said. Starts with the easiest stuff and then moves on to the harder stuff. Then web exploitation. So the people that made the Web Application Hacker's Handbook are the people that made Web Security Academy. Instead of making another edition of the book, they just turned it into an online course. So web security, they're the ones who made the app called Burp Suite, which you'll learn more about as we do CTFs. It's an interesting tool. So they have that as their resource. Then penetration testing, which is putting all of the above together, and then some more stuff just related to penetration testing. The Hacker Playbook, Introduction to Penetration Testing. These two are both accessible at a beginner level. Introduction more teaches you about it, while the Hacker Playbook just more gives you like tool, what people use it for, how they use it. It's less of a book that you would want to read as compared to Introduction to Penetration Testing. Social engineering, the art of science of human hacking, sorry. This is about what I mentioned, like the talking, the open source intelligence, information gathering. People put that together to manipulate their way into things. That's social engineering. I showed a video of that in one of the earlier meetings if you were around then. And finally, advanced penetration testing. This is like the most advanced book here. I don't know why this is in the certification section. I'll be adding this as I go on. So the last thing is, obviously there are a lot of certifications out there in the cybersecurity field, but there are a couple that are recognized as the like industry standard. So right now, cybersecurity as a field, you can get a lot of jobs with just like certifications and knowledge. It's most likely not going to be like that in the near future as it starts to become more like computer programming or more like software engineering and an established field. So it's highly recommended that you get a 4-year degree in computer science or something similar before you decide to get into the cybersecurity field. But as of now, you can still get in with just certifications. I'll be updating this with certifications that provide you with some additional basic knowledge. So if you're doing Cyber Patriot, for example, which is like more industry standard based, a lot of people who I've talked to who are doing really well in Cyber Patriot, like there is a person from LASA's Cyber Patriot team who is #1 in the state, who is actually in our Discord server. I asked him to join so he could help us out if we needed anything. But him and most other people I talked to independently that are really good at Cyber Patriot have gotten their knowledge from doing the Security Plus certification. Like I said, I don't have any information here right now, but I'll be posting whatever there is about certifications here. So you guys may or may not have heard of CompTIA. So they're the people that offer these certifications. Jordy is actually certified in Security Plus, right? Jordy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's certified in Security Plus. So that teaches you some basic security concepts that are being tested by Cyber Patriot. A lot of the stuff you learn in those courses, you're already learning. A lot of the stuff you learn in those certifications, you learn just by doing CTF competitions and through these categories and sources. But for more specific stuff in the context of the industry rather than just knowledge, those certification courses, which are free, are a good starting point. So I'll post more info about that. I'll talk more about that later. So that was the introduction to Applied Cybersecurity Society, as well as our focus for this year. Does anybody have any questions? And has anybody tried to create a CyberStart account during this time? I think most of you guys already have them, but does anybody not have a CyberStart account? Who's in this call?
I do.
Yeah, so I'll send you the link to go through CyberStart. I think, okay, I'll start presenting now. You don't need to see anything else. So while I'm pulling that up, how do y'all feel about what we're doing this year? Yeah, thanks, Takuto. Do you have any suggestions, questions, comments?
Is the CyberStart competition different from Girls Go CyberStart?
It's the same thing.
Okay.
They just opened it up to everyone this year and called it CyberStart
It was
America.
actually really fun.
Yeah, Kelly was talking to me about that.